Hi guys! Tonight we're going on a long, quiet journey through one of the oldest and most complex civilizations in the world. We'll explore the story of Iran, a land of empires, revolutions, poets, and politics. From the heights of ancient Persia to the depths of modern nuclear negotiations, Iran's history is not only vast, it's also layered and subtle. So lie down, close your eyes, and let's begin. A very long time ago, before it was called Iran, this land was known to the world as Persia, a name that still echoes with power, beauty, and ancient wisdom. The story starts over 2,500 years ago, in a vast region stretching from the Aegean Sea to the mountains of Central Asia. In the 6th century BCE, a man named Cyrus the Great founded the Achaemenid Empire. He created not just a kingdom, but the world's first true empire, uniting dozens of cultures, languages, and peoples under one rule. His method wasn't brutal conquest. Cyrus believed in tolerance. When he captured Babylon in 539 BCE, he didn't burn it to the ground. Instead, he freed the Jewish people held there in captivity and allowed them to return to their homeland. That's why even today, Cyrus is remembered not just in Iran, but in Jewish, Greek, and Western traditions as a rare figure, a powerful ruler with a human face. The Persian Empire was built on infrastructure, not just armies. Roads stretched thousands of miles across deserts and mountains. Couriers on horseback relayed messages across the empire in just days, something the Greeks couldn't believe. The royal road system, administrative divisions, coinage, and respect for local customs were all innovations that allowed Persia to remain stable. Persepolis, the ceremonial capital, still stands in ruins, quiet, carved stone testifying to a time when this land stood at the center of the known world. But empires rise and empires fall. By 330 BCE, Alexander the Great swept in from Macedonia. He defeated Darius III and burned Persepolis, perhaps in revenge for the earlier Persian invasion of Greece, or perhaps in a drunken rage. It's hard to say for sure. Alexander's conquest ended the Achaemenid Empire, but the Persian spirit didn't disappear. Even under foreign rule, Persian identity endured. It hid in the language, in poetry, in religion. For centuries after Alexander, Iran passed from empire to empire, the Seleucids, the Parthians, and then the Sasanians. Each new dynasty built upon the past, adapting old customs and adding new layers. The Sasanian Empire, which lasted from the 3rd to the 7th century CE, revived much of ancient Persia's greatness. It became the main rival of the Roman and Byzantine empires. Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persian faith, was its official religion. Fire temples dotted the landscape. Rituals were strict, priests powerful. And yet, even as these empires ruled, Iran remained a place of cultural blending, where ideas from India, Central Asia, Greece, and Mesopotamia all met and merged. But history would shift again, slowly, then all at once. In the early 7th century, the winds of change began to blow from the Arabian Peninsula. A new religious movement, born in Mecca, would forever alter the future of Persia. Islam was spreading rapidly, and within just a few decades of the Prophet Muhammad's death in 632 CE, Arab Muslim armies pushed into Sasanian territory. The decisive blow came at the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah in 636, followed by the capture of Ctesiphon, the imperial capital. By 651, the last Sasanian emperor, Yazdijerd III, was dead, and the Sasanian Empire had collapsed. But the Islamic conquest of Persia was not just a story of military victory. It marked a profound transformation of Persian culture, identity, and religion. Zoroastrianism began to fade. Some of its practices and values were absorbed into the new faith. Others were lost. Over time, most Persians converted to Islam, but they did not simply adopt Arab identity. Instead, they shaped Islam in their own way. Persian scholars, poets, and thinkers became central to the Islamic Golden Age. The Abbasid Caliphate, which ruled from Baghdad, was heavily influenced by Persian administrative systems, court rituals, and literature. Many of the most celebrated scholars of the time, from Avicenna in philosophy and medicine to Al-Khwarizmi in mathematics, were Persian by culture and birth. Persian became the language of high culture across much of the Muslim world, especially under later dynasties like the Samanids and Buyids. While the Caliphate ruled in name, various Persian dynasties rose and fell across the region. One of the most important was the Safavid Empire, which would emerge centuries later and define Iran's modern religious identity. But before the Safavids, Iran would experience more waves of conquest, chaos, and rebuilding. In the 13th century, the Mongols stormed across Asia. Led by Genghis Khan's descendants, they shattered the Islamic world, including Persia. Cities were burned, libraries destroyed, populations slaughtered. The fall of Baghdad in 1258 and the earlier devastation of Persian cities marked one of the darkest chapters in the region's history. Yet even in destruction, Iran adapted. The Mongol rulers, especially under the Ilkhanid dynasty, gradually converted to Islam and adopted Persian customs. Persian architects, artists, and administrators helped rebuild cities and courts. Miniature painting flourished. Literature continued to thrive. It's in this period that we see the emergence of enduring Persian classics, such as the poetry of Rumi, Hafez, and Sa'di, whose verses are still memorized and quoted across Iran today. Even under foreign domination, Persian identity refused to vanish. It remained resilient, bending but never breaking. And soon, Iran would once again rise as a unified state with a powerful new religious identity, one that would define its modern character: Shia Islam. The next great transformation in Iran's history came in the early 16th century, with the rise of the Safavid dynasty. This was not just a political shift, it was a religious revolution. For the first time, a major state in the Muslim world officially adopted Twelver Sharia Islam as its state religion. This decision, made by Shah Ismail I in 1501, would permanently shape Iran's identity and set it apart from its Sunni neighbors. At the time, most of the Muslim world was Sunni, but the Safavids were determined to forge a distinct Persian path. Shah Ismail, who came to power at just 14 years old, declared himself the spiritual and political leader of all Iran. He claimed descent from the Prophet Muhammad, mixed messianic ideas into his rule, and used Sharia Islam as both a unifying tool and a justification for royal authority. The conversion of the population wasn't immediate or peaceful. Many Persians were still Sunni at the time, and resistance was met with force. Religious scholars from other Sharia regions were brought in to educate and sometimes enforce the new order. But over the course of a few generations, the transformation was largely complete. Iran became a Sharia-majority country, and remains so to this day. The Safavid era brought more than just religious change. Under rulers like Shah Abbas the Great, Iran experienced a cultural and economic renaissance. The capital, Isfahan, was transformed into one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Its architecture, with vast blue-tiled mosques and grand public squares, still stuns visitors. Trade flourished, silk and ceramics flowed through Persian markets, and alliances were formed with European powers, often to counter the Ottomans, Iran's Sunni rivals to the west. Shah Abbas also strengthened the military, centralized authority, and reduced the power of tribal leaders. His rule marked the high point of Safavid power. But after his death in 1629, the dynasty slowly declined. Invasions, internal strife, and weak leadership took their toll. By the early 18th century, the Safavids were overthrown by Afghan tribes, and Iran was once again thrown into chaos. Yet even as the political structure crumbled, the religious and cultural foundations the Safavids laid remained firm. Iran's Sharia identity would endure, influencing everything from local rituals to global politics. Out of this period of disunity and invasion, a new dynasty would emerge, one that would try to modernize Iran while preserving its traditions. But it would also face new challenges: the rise of European imperialism, internal rebellions, and the growing influence of Western powers. After the fall of the Safavids and a period of political fragmentation, Iran gradually found stability under the Qajar dynasty, which rose to power in the late 18th century. Founded by Aga Muhammad Khan in 1794, the Qajars established Tehran as the new capital, a modest city at the time that would eventually grow into the political heart of modern Iran. The Qajar era was marked by a complex mix of tradition and tension. On one hand, Iran retained its Shura religious structure, its Persian cultural identity, and its monarchic rule. On the other, it faced increasing pressure from foreign powers, especially Russia and Britain, both of whom were expanding their influence in the region. Throughout the 19th century, Iran found itself caught between these two imperial giants. Russia advanced from the north, seizing large swaths of territory in the Caucasus after two devastating wars. The treaties of Gulistan in 1813 and Turkmenchay in 1828 forced Iran to surrender lands that are now part of Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. These humiliating losses deeply wounded national pride. Meanwhile, the British Empire focused on securing its route to India. It meddled in Iran's southern territories, dominated trade routes, and gradually pulled the Persian Gulf into its sphere of influence. By the mid-1800s, Iran's economy and infrastructure were heavily dependent on foreign loans, concessions, and advisors. This gave outsiders considerable leverage over the Qajar court, often at the expense of Iranian sovereignty. At the same time, dissatisfaction was growing among Iran's merchants, clergy, and intellectuals. Many viewed the monarchy as corrupt and incapable of resisting foreign domination. Concessions to foreign companies, such as a tobacco monopoly granted to the British, sparked nationwide protests. The tobacco protest of 1891, led by clerics and supported by ordinary citizens, became one of the first successful mass movements in modern Iranian history. It forced the Shah to cancel the concession and proved that coordinated civil resistance could yield results. This set the stage for something even larger, a constitutional movement that would try to limit royal power and introduce modern institutions. Inspired by developments in Europe and growing nationalist sentiment at home, reformers began demanding a parliament, rule of law, and political accountability. By the early 20th century, Iran was on the brink of a major transformation. The old structures of monarchy and divine right were being challenged. Modernity, though still fragile and deeply contested, was making its first serious appearance in Persian politics. But as we'll see, the path toward a modern Iran would not be smooth. Foreign interference, internal divisions, and shifting ideologies would continue to shape and often disrupt the nation's future. At the dawn of the 20th century, Iran stood at a crossroads. The desire for reform, modern institutions, and national dignity was spreading, fueled by intellectuals, merchants, students, and members of the clergy. Years of foreign domination and royal mismanagement had taken their toll. The time had come for change, and that change arrived in the form of the Persian Constitutional Revolution. In 1906, after years of growing unrest, public pressure forced the Qajar Shah, Muzaffar ad-Din, to sign a royal decree establishing Iran's first parliament, or Majlis. It was a landmark moment. For the first time, power would be shared with an elected body, laws would be written, and the monarchy would, in theory, be held accountable to the people. But the dream of constitutionalism quickly ran into trouble. There were deep divisions over what kind of government Iran should have. Conservative clerics feared losing religious authority, while secular reformers wanted to bring European-style democracy. Meanwhile, foreign powers, especially Britain and Russia, continued to interfere. In 1907, the two empires signed a secret agreement dividing Iran into spheres of influence: the north for Russia, the south for Britain, and a narrow neutral zone in between. Iran wasn't even consulted. These external pressures, combined with internal conflict, soon plunged the country into chaos. The Majlis was bombarded in 1908 by forces loyal to Muhammad Ali Shah, the new Qajar ruler. Civil war followed. Though constitutionalists eventually regained some power, the momentum was broken. The dream of a strong, independent, constitutional monarchy faded. Then came World War I, and though Iran declared neutrality, its territory was violated repeatedly by British, Russian, and Ottoman forces. The war devastated the economy, worsened famine, and deepened public resentment toward both the monarchy and foreign powers. By the end of the war, the Qajar dynasty was hopelessly weak. In 1921, a military officer named Reza Khan staged a coup. Within a few years, he had sidelined the Qajars entirely. In 1925, he declared himself Shah, founding the Pahlavi dynasty. Reza Shah was determined to modernize Iran on his terms. His rule marked a dramatic break from the past. He introduced widespread reforms, building roads and railways, secularizing education, promoting industrialization, and even banning traditional dress like the veil. Inspired by Turkey's Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, Reza Shah wanted to create a strong, centralized, secular state. But he ruled with an iron fist, suppressing dissent and curbing freedoms. His modernization was swift but authoritarian. Despite opposition, Iran was changing rapidly. The country was no longer the fractured, feudal society of a century earlier. But the Shah's policies also alienated many, especially religious leaders and rural communities. And as global tensions rose once again in the late 1930s, Reza Shah's increasingly close ties to Germany would soon bring dramatic consequences. As World War II erupted in Europe, Iran officially declared its neutrality, just as it had during the First World War. But once again, its strategic location and valuable resources made it impossible for global powers to ignore. Iran's growing relationship with Nazi Germany alarmed both the British and the Soviets, who feared German influence in the region and wanted to secure supply lines for the Allied war effort. In 1941, British and Soviet forces jointly invaded Iran in what became known as the Anglo-Soviet invasion. They quickly occupied the country, deposed Reza Shah, and forced him into exile. His son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, just 21 years old, was installed on the throne as the new Shah. Though he held the title of king, his early reign was overshadowed by foreign occupation and limited authority. The Allied occupation lasted until 1946. During this time, Iran became a key logistical route for supplying the Soviet Union through what was called the Persian Corridor. While the occupation brought some economic activity, it also heightened nationalist anger and political instability. In the years following the war, Iran experienced a rare moment of political openness. The press flourished, political parties formed, intellectual life blossomed, and most significantly, a powerful movement arose demanding the nationalization of Iran's oil, long controlled by the British through the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. The figure at the heart of this movement was Mohammad Mossadegh, a respected politician and outspoken nationalist. In 1951, Mossadegh became prime minister and quickly moved to nationalize Iran's oil industry, a decision that enraged Britain and alarmed the United States. The British imposed a global embargo on Iranian oil, and tensions escalated. In 1953, a secret operation, Operation Ajax, changed the course of Iranian history. Orchestrated by the CIA and MI6, the coup overthrew Mossadegh's government and reinstalled the Shah with expanded powers. It was one of the first major Cold War interventions by the United States in the Middle East and would cast a long shadow over Iranian-American relations for decades to come. After the coup, the Shah consolidated power, outlawed opposition parties, and created a powerful internal security agency, SAVAK, to monitor and suppress dissent. Backed by Western governments, he positioned himself as a modernizing monarch, launching massive development projects known as the White Revolution. But beneath the surface, resentment was growing. The Shah's reforms, land redistribution, women's suffrage, and literacy campaigns were ambitious but uneven. Wealth remained concentrated among elites. Corruption was rampant, and his increasingly autocratic rule alienated a wide range of groups, from conservative clerics to liberal intellectuals, from bazaar merchants to leftist students. By the 1970s, despite oil wealth and modernization, a storm was brewing. Protests began to grow, opposition intensified, and a movement unlike anything the region had seen was taking shape, one that would soon erupt into full-scale revolution. By the late 1970s, Iran was on the edge. The country had undergone rapid modernization, but many felt that it had come at the cost of tradition, religion, and freedom. The Shah, once seen as a reformer, was now widely viewed as an authoritarian ruler disconnected from his people. Despite a booming oil economy, much of the population remained poor, and political repression had silenced nearly every voice of dissent, except one. That voice belonged to Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a senior Shi'a cleric who had been exiled by the Shah years earlier for criticizing the regime. Living in Iraq and later France, Khomeini continued to speak out, smuggling cassette tapes and messages into Iran, where they spread quickly through mosques, homes, and schools. He condemned the Shah's government as corrupt, oppressive, and un-Islamic, and his message resonated deeply with millions of Iranians. In 1978, the growing unrest finally exploded. It began with protests in the city of Qom after a government newspaper insulted Khomeini. The regime cracked down with force, killing several demonstrators. Instead of silencing the opposition, it fueled it. More protests followed, in Tabriz, Yazd, Tehran, and each time, the violence escalated. What began as a call for reform soon transformed into a full-fledged revolutionary movement. Demonstrations grew in size and intensity. Religious groups, students, workers, and secular activists all joined together in opposition to the monarchy. Massive strikes paralyzed the economy. Oil production halted. The government responded with martial law and open fire. Most infamously on Black Friday, September 8, 1978, when troops killed scores of protesters in Tehran's JLA Square. The event shattered any remaining legitimacy the Shah's regime had. By the end of the year, the situation was spiraling out of control. The Shah, battling cancer and losing control of the military, fled the country in January 1979, never to return. Just weeks later, Khomeini returned from exile to a hero's welcome. Millions flooded the streets of Tehran to greet him. The monarchy had fallen. In February 1979, the Iranian military declared neutrality, and revolutionary forces took over government institutions. The Islamic Republic of Iran was born. Khomeini quickly moved to consolidate power. A national referendum was held in March 1979, asking whether Iran should become an Islamic republic. The official results claimed over 98% approval. A new constitution was drafted, giving ultimate authority to the supreme leader, a religious figure with power over the government, military, and judiciary. The revolution was complete, but it wasn't over. Different factions had united to overthrow the Shah, but they did not all share the same vision for Iran's future. Liberals, leftists, and secular nationalists soon found themselves pushed aside or imprisoned. What emerged was a theocratic state unlike anything the modern Middle East had seen, one led by clerics, governed by Islamic law, and deeply suspicious of the West. And in just a few months, that suspicion would explode into a full diplomatic crisis that would haunt Iranian-American relations for generations. In November 1979, just months after the revolution, the fragile relationship between Iran and the United States collapsed in a dramatic and deeply symbolic act. On the 4th of that month, a group of Iranian university students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 52 American diplomats and staff hostage. The takeover wasn't spontaneous. It was a response to the Shah, now in exile, being allowed into the United States for medical treatment. To the revolutionaries, this act was more than a protest. They feared that the U.S. might attempt another coup, like the one in 1953 that had overthrown Prime Minister Mossadegh. By seizing the embassy, the students believed they were preventing another intervention and striking a blow against imperialism. Ayatollah Khomeini endorsed the takeover, calling it a second revolution. For the new Islamic Republic, it became a defining moment, a declaration that Iran would no longer be a pawn of Western powers. For the United States, it was a national humiliation broadcast live on global television. The hostage crisis would last 444 days. Repeated diplomatic efforts failed. A secret U.S. military rescue operation, Operation Eagle Claw, was launched in April 1980, but ended in disaster when a sandstorm caused mechanical failure and a deadly crash in the Iranian desert. The crisis dragged on, dominating U.S. headlines and contributing to the defeat of President Jimmy Carter in the 1980 election. The hostages were finally released on January 20, 1981, the day Ronald Reagan was inaugurated. But the damage was already done. Diplomatic relations between Iran and the U.S. were severed and have never been fully restored. Back in Iran, the Islamic Republic was tightening its grip. A new political structure was now firmly in place. a theocracy guided by the supreme leader and supported by religious institutions, but with some elements of republicanism, like an elected president and parliament. Yet real power rested with the clerics. Khomeini's vision was not just to rule Iran under Islamic law, but to export the revolution to the wider Muslim world. This alarmed neighboring countries, especially Iraq, led by the ambitious and brutal dictator Saddam Hussein. In 1980, just months after the hostage crisis ended, Saddam launched a surprise invasion of Iran, hoping to take advantage of the revolution's chaos. What followed was one of the longest and bloodiest conflicts of the 20th century, the Iran-Iraq War. It would last 8 years, cost over 1 million lives, and leave both countries economically devastated and politically hardened. The war would shape an entire generation of Iranians. It would reinforce the regime's power, deepen anti-Western sentiment, and define Iran's regional role for decades to come. The Iran-Iraq War, which began in 1980, quickly escalated into a brutal and grinding conflict with no clear winner. Saddam Hussein had expected a swift victory. He believed Iran's revolutionary chaos and weakened military would allow him to seize control of the oil-rich province of Khuzestan, home to many ethnic Arabs. But his assumptions were wrong. The Iranian people, deeply nationalistic and still riding the wave of revolutionary fervor, rallied behind their new Islamic government. Volunteers flooded into the military. The newly formed Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, played a central role in organizing resistance and shaping the war into something far larger than a territorial dispute. For Iran's leadership, it became a sacred defense, a holy war to protect both their nation and their revolution. The war soon turned into a bloody stalemate. Trench warfare stretched across hundreds of miles. Poison gas attacks, mass infantry assaults, and air raids devastated both sides. Civilians were not spared. Cities like Khorramshahr were reduced to rubble. Waves of young Iranians, many barely teenagers, were sent to the front lines. Some walked through minefields with plastic keys to heaven hung around their necks, a haunting symbol of the regime's mix of faith and sacrifice. Internationally, Iraq received backing from a wide range of powers, including the United States, Soviet Union, and several Arab states. Iran, largely isolated, turned inward. Despite sanctions and isolation, the Islamic Republic portrayed itself as the righteous victim of global aggression. The war helped the regime consolidate power and eliminate political rivals under the banner of national security. Meanwhile, Iran began to develop a parallel state structure. The IRGC grew stronger, not just as a military force, but as a political and economic actor. It ran businesses, controlled media, and built ties with Shia groups abroad. The war created a generation of veterans who would later occupy top positions in government, intelligence, and industry. In 1988, after 8 years of bloodshed, both sides agreed to a ceasefire brokered by the United Nations. Neither side had gained significant territory. The economic damage was immense. Over 1 million people were dead or wounded, and while Iraq emerged militarily intact, its economy was shattered, something that would later push Saddam Hussein toward another disastrous war. For Iran, the end of the war was bittersweet. The country had survived, but at a staggering cost. The revolution had been preserved, but many freedoms were lost. Ayatollah Khomeini famously accepted the ceasefire as if drinking a cup of poison. It was a rare moment of public disappointment. A year later, in 1989, Khomeini died. His passing marked the end of an era, but not the end of the system he had built. The death of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini in 1989 marked a turning point for the Islamic Republic. For a decade, he had been the undisputed spiritual and political leader of Iran, the face of the revolution, the voice of resistance, and the architect of the new theocratic system. His absence created a power vacuum that had to be filled carefully to maintain stability. Within hours of his death, the Assembly of Experts, the clerical body responsible for choosing Iran's supreme leader, made a surprising decision. Instead of selecting one of the older, more established religious scholars, they appointed Ali Khamenei, who was then serving as president of Iran. Khamenei was not a senior cleric at the time, and many questioned his religious authority. But he was politically loyal, deeply connected to the Revolutionary Guard, and firmly committed to preserving the Islamic system. To support his appointment, Khamenei was quickly promoted to the rank of Ayatollah, and constitutional amendments expanded the powers of the supreme leader. Over time, he would grow into one of the most influential figures in Iranian history. Quieter and more cautious than Khomeini, but no less determined to preserve the revolution's legacy. Meanwhile, the presidency passed to Ali Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, one of the revolution's original architects and a pragmatic figure with a focus on rebuilding. Iran was emerging from 8 years of war, and its economy was in ruins. Infrastructure was damaged. Oil production was down. Inflation and unemployment were high. Rafsanjani promoted a period of economic reconstruction, seeking foreign investment and reopening limited channels to the outside world. During the 1990s, Iran saw a modest cultural thaw. There was more room for literature, film, and academic debate, though always within limits. Conservative forces remained powerful, and the intelligence services tightly monitored dissent. Still, a new generation of Iranians was coming of age. One that had not known the Shah, had grown up during the war, and was beginning to ask difficult questions about the direction of their country. Tensions between reformists and hardliners became more visible. The election of Mohammad Khatami in 1997, a cleric with a message of dialogue and openness, signaled that many Iranians were ready for change. Khatami won in a landslide, especially among women and young voters. He called for a dialogue among civilizations, promoted civil society, and sought better relations with the West. His presidency marked a rare moment of optimism. Newspapers flourished. Political debates returned. Even some forms of protest were tolerated. But Khatami's efforts were constantly blocked by unelected institutions, especially the judiciary and the Supreme Leader's office. Reforms stalled. Frustration grew. And behind the scenes, a new element was beginning to shape Iranian politics: concerns over nuclear technology. What had started as a peaceful program decades earlier was becoming a point of international suspicion, and soon it would become the focus of a global standoff. Iran's nuclear program began in the 1950s under the Atoms for Peace initiative, supported by the United States. Its original goals were peaceful, developing energy and medical technology. However, the 1979 revolution disrupted progress. Western cooperation halted, and many projects were abandoned or delayed. In the 1980s, Iran sought assistance from other countries, including Russia and China, to revive its program. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, the nuclear issue became increasingly controversial. Western governments, particularly the United States, grew suspicious that Iran's ambitions extended beyond civilian energy production, fearing that Tehran was pursuing nuclear weapons. Iran consistently denied these accusations, insisting its program was peaceful and intended to meet the country's growing energy needs. This growing tension sparked a series of diplomatic confrontations. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, began inspections, but concerns about transparency and undisclosed facilities fueled mistrust. Sanctions were imposed by the United Nations, the United States, and the European Union, aiming to pressure Iran into compliance. Inside Iran, the nuclear program became a symbol of national pride and sovereignty. Many Iranians viewed it as a right of a sovereign nation and a means to counterbalance regional rivals and Western influence. Political factions within Iran disagreed on how to approach negotiations, but hardliners often used the nuclear issue to strengthen their position and rally support. The situation remained tense throughout the 2000s and into the 2010s. There were moments of hope, such as the election of President Hassan Rouhani in 2013, a moderate who pushed for dialogue with the West. This led to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action (JCPOA) in 2015, commonly known as the Iran nuclear deal. Under this agreement, Iran agreed to limit its nuclear activities in exchange for relief from economic sanctions. Alongside the nuclear program, Iran's regional role has dramatically shaped its modern history. Since the revolution, Iran has pursued a policy of supporting allied groups and governments across the Middle East, especially where Shia populations exist or where Western influence is strong. This policy has made Iran a key player in conflicts far beyond its borders. In Lebanon, Iran helped establish and continues to support the Hezbollah movement, a powerful Shia political and militant organization. Hezbollah has been involved in repeated conflicts with Israel, most notably the 2006 Lebanon War. Iran's backing provides the group with funding, weapons, and training, cementing its role as a significant force in regional politics. In Iraq, Iran's influence grew especially after the 2003 U.S. invasion that toppled Saddam Hussein. Tehran forged ties with Shia political parties and militias, becoming a dominant force in shaping post-war Iraqi politics. Iranian-backed groups have often clashed with Sunni extremists, as well as with American forces. The Syrian civil war, which erupted in 2011, saw Iran intervene decisively to support President Bashar al-Assad. Through military advisors, proxy militias, and financial aid, Iran helped keep the Assad regime in power, preserving its access to the Mediterranean and securing a vital ally. This involvement has also intensified sectarian tensions and deepened Iran's rivalry with Saudi Arabia. In Yemen, Iran supports the Houthi rebels in their ongoing conflict against a Saudi-led coalition. Though the extent of Iranian involvement is debated, the war has become a proxy battleground for regional powers, further destabilizing the area. These interventions reflect Iran's strategic goal to build a network of allied forces and states to counterbalance its adversaries and project influence across the Middle East. However, they have also drawn criticism and sanctions, contributing to the complex web of hostility and diplomacy in the region. Despite external pressures, Iran continues to balance its revolutionary ideology with pragmatic statecraft. It faces ongoing challenges: economic difficulties worsened by sanctions, internal demands for reform, and a younger generation that is more connected to the world than ever before. Iran's history is far from over. It remains a nation of deep contradictions, ancient yet modern, religious yet political, isolated yet influential. Its story continues to unfold, quietly shaping the future of a troubled region. As we look back on Iran's long and complex history, it's important to remember how deeply layered its culture truly is. Beyond politics and wars, Iran has been a cradle of art, poetry, philosophy, and science for thousands of years. The Persian language, with its rich literary tradition, has been a unifying thread through centuries of upheaval. Classical Persian poets like Ferdowsi, who composed the epic Shahnameh, kept alive stories of ancient kings and heroes. Their works have inspired generations, preserving Iran's pre-Islamic history and identity. Later poets, such as Hafez, Rumi, and Sadi, explored themes of love, spirituality, and human nature, blending mysticism with everyday life. Iranian architecture, too, reflects this rich past. From the grand palaces of Persepolis to the intricate tilework of Isfahan's mosques, every building tells a story. Gardens, designed as earthly paradises, demonstrate a unique connection to nature and philosophy. Philosophers and scientists like Avicenna and Al-Farabi contributed significantly to medicine, mathematics, and metaphysics, influencing both the Islamic world and Europe. This cultural legacy remains a source of pride and identity for Iranians today, a reminder that their nation's soul transcends political change. At the same time, modern Iran is a place where tradition and change coexist uneasily. Cities like Tehran are bustling metropolises, filled with youth who embrace global trends and technology, while still rooted in centuries-old customs and beliefs. This tension between old and new, between revolution and reform, has shaped Iran's recent history and will continue to influence its future. The story of Iran is far from simple, but that complexity is what makes it so fascinating. Its past is a tapestry woven from conquest and creativity, faith and freedom, struggle and survival. As you drift deeper into sleep, let the quiet history of this ancient land remind you of the enduring power of identity. How a nation, through millennia of change, holds onto the stories that define it. Moving forward into the 21st century, Iran faced new and evolving challenges. The early 2000s were marked by heightened tensions with the West, especially the United States, following the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan and the 2003 invasion of Iraq. These events reshaped the geopolitical landscape, pushing Iran to strengthen its regional alliances and expand its influence. Domestically, Iranians grappled with economic difficulties, partly due to international sanctions targeting its nuclear program and alleged support from militant groups. Inflation, unemployment, and corruption affected daily life, fueling frustration among many citizens. Despite this, Iran saw a vibrant civil society emerge. Universities became hubs of debate, art and cinema flourished, and many young Iranians sought a path between tradition and modernity. The internet and social media, although restricted, connected millions to global ideas and movements. Political life remained turbulent. The disputed presidential election of 2009, which declared Mahmoud Ahmadinejad the winner, sparked widespread protests known as the Green Movement. Millions took to the streets demanding transparency, democracy, and human rights. The government responded with a harsh crackdown, imprisoning activists and restricting freedoms. Internationally, the Obama administration pursued diplomacy, leading to the 2015 nuclear deal, a hopeful moment that promised economic relief and reduced hostilities. Yet the deal's collapse and renewed tensions under the Trump administration reignited fears of conflict. Iran's story in recent decades is one of resilience amid pressure. It continues to balance a complex identity, a proud civilization facing modern realities, a nation navigating between revolution's legacy and the aspirations of a new generation. As we reflect on Iran's past and present, it becomes clear that history is never static. It moves, shifts, and evolves, shaped by the people who live it, the choices they make, and the dreams they hold. In recent years, Iran has faced some of its most significant challenges yet. Economic hardship continues to weigh heavily on its population, worsened by sanctions and global shifts in energy markets. Inflation has soared, unemployment remains high, and access to basic goods is often limited. These difficulties have sparked protests across the country, sometimes small and local, sometimes widespread and intense. The government, meanwhile, continues to assert its authority, balancing calls for reform with efforts to maintain control. Political opposition is often met with repression, and freedoms remain restricted. Yet despite this, a vibrant culture of activism persists, especially among young Iranians who are connected to the world through social media and education. On the international stage, Iran's role remains complex and controversial. It continues to support allied groups across the Middle East, while facing diplomatic isolation and fluctuating tensions with global powers. Negotiations over its nuclear program remain a central issue, with the future uncertain. Meanwhile, technology and innovation quietly advance within the country. Iranian scientists and engineers work in fields ranging from space exploration to medicine, reflecting a deep commitment to progress despite external pressures. Iran's story today is still being written, a story of a nation with ancient roots and a dynamic present, facing the challenges of modernity while holding fast to its identity. As we conclude this chapter of history, remember that every nation's story is shaped by its people, their hopes, struggles, and resilience. Iran's history is a testament to endurance through centuries of change, and its future holds endless possibilities. Looking back on Iran's history, one cannot ignore the incredible continuity amid upheaval. From the rise of the Achaemenid Empire, which built one of the ancient world's first great civilizations, to the modern Islamic Republic, Iran's story is a testament to endurance and transformation. Each era brought profound change: the conquests of Alexander the Great, the flowering of Persian art and philosophy, the adoption of Islam and the blending of cultures, the rise and fall of dynasties, and the struggles between tradition and modernity. Yet, throughout, a common thread runs deep: a profound attachment to identity, language, faith, and the land itself. This has allowed Iran not only to survive but to influence the world around it in countless ways, culturally, politically, and intellectually. Today, as the nation faces new challenges and opportunities, this rich heritage continues to inspire its people. The story of Iran reminds us that history is never simply a record of the past. It is the living foundation upon which the future is built. So, as you drift deeper into sleep, carry with you the quiet echoes of this ancient land, its victories, its trials, and its enduring spirit. Iran's geography has played a crucial role in shaping its history and identity. Situated at the crossroads of Asia, the Middle East, and the Caucasus, it has long been a bridge between civilizations. The vast Iranian plateau, surrounded by mountains and deserts, provided both protection and challenge for its inhabitants. Its location made Iran a target for conquerors, from the armies of Alexander to the Arabs, Mongols, Turks, and Europeans. Yet it also allowed Persian culture to absorb and influence diverse peoples. The famed Silk Road passed through Iranian lands, bringing trade, ideas, religions, and art. The varied climate and terrain fostered a rich agricultural tradition, supporting urban centers and royal courts for millennia. Water management, including qanats, underground channels to irrigate crops, demonstrated remarkable engineering skill, vital for sustaining life in arid regions. This relationship between people and place has defined Iran's resilience. Despite invasions, internal strife, and external pressures, the land remains central to Persian identity, a constant in an ever-changing world. Religion has been a powerful force shaping Iran's culture and politics throughout its history. Before Islam, the dominant faith was Zoroastrianism, founded by the prophet Zarathustra around the 6th century BCE. Zoroastrianism introduced ideas of duality, good versus evil, and emphasized moral responsibility, influencing later religions and philosophies. When Islam arrived in the 7th century CE, it transformed Iran's spiritual landscape. The gradual conversion from Zoroastrianism to Islam redefined social and political structures. The later adoption of Sharia Islam by the Safavid dynasty in the 16th century further distinguished Iran from its Sunni neighbors, cementing a unique religious identity. Sharia beliefs, rituals, and clerical institutions became deeply woven into Iranian society. The religious establishment gained significant influence over governance, law, and education. This religious identity has both united the nation and sometimes fueled internal and external conflicts. Throughout centuries, Iran has been home to diverse religious minorities, including Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, and Baha'is, adding to its complex cultural mosaic. The interplay of faith and power remains a defining feature of Iran's ongoing story. The rich tradition of Persian art and literature offers a window into the soul of Iran. Calligraphy, miniature painting, carpet weaving, and architecture reveal centuries of creativity and devotion to beauty. Persian carpets, renowned worldwide, are not only functional but also artistic masterpieces, each design telling a story or reflecting a region's heritage. In literature, Persian poetry has a special place. It combines profound philosophy, mysticism, and lyrical beauty. Poets like Rumi, whose verses explore love and divine unity, transcend national and religious boundaries, touching hearts globally. His work, along with that of Hafez, Sadi, and Omar Khayyam, remains alive in Iranian culture and beyond. Music, too, holds a cherished place. Traditional Persian music, with its intricate melodies and instruments like the tar and santur, reflects the emotional depth of the people. Despite periods of political repression, artists have preserved and evolved Iran's artistic heritage, blending old and new. These cultural expressions serve as a bridge between Iran's past and present, offering continuity amid change and inspiring future generations. Iran's cultural richness extends far beyond its politics and conflicts, rooted deeply in its artistic and intellectual achievements that have influenced civilizations far beyond its borders. Persian literature, for example, has been a beacon of philosophical thought, spiritual reflection, and poetic beauty for centuries. The epic Shahnameh, written by Ferdowsi around the year 1000 CE, is not merely a story of kings and heroes, but an epic that preserves the Persian language and identity after the Arab conquest. It weaves together myths, legends, and history in a narrative that has become foundational to Iranian self-understanding. Poetry occupies a special place in Iranian culture. The works of mystic poets such as Rumi, Hafez, Sadi, and Omar Khayyam have captivated audiences for centuries, exploring themes of love, divine unity, human frailty, and the search for meaning. Their verses are often memorized, quoted, and cherished in everyday life, recited at celebrations, in moments of sorrow, and as philosophical contemplation. This poetic tradition bridges the ancient and modern, the sacred and secular. Iran's contribution to visual arts is equally impressive. Persian miniatures, with their intricate detail and vibrant colors, tell stories from literature and history, blending realism with fantasy. These tiny paintings often adorn manuscripts and provide a glimpse into the rich imaginative world of Persia's past. Carpet weaving, a craft renowned worldwide, combines artistry with function. Each rug is a complex tapestry of symbolism and regional identity, with patterns that have been passed down through generations. Owning a Persian carpet is not just about decoration. It is a connection to heritage. Architecture in Iran reflects a blend of utility, spirituality, and aesthetics. From the majestic ruins of Persepolis to the breathtaking mosques of Isfahan, Iranian architecture often incorporates intricate tilework, calligraphy, and gardens designed as earthly paradises. The design principles emphasize harmony between nature and human creation, with water features, light play, and geometric patterns creating spaces that inspire contemplation. Music, too, holds a vital place in Iran's cultural landscape. Traditional Persian music employs a unique modal system known as the dastgah, with delicate instruments like the tar, setar, and santur creating haunting melodies that evoke deep emotion. Despite political restrictions at times, music has continued to evolve, blending classical and modern influences, and playing a role in both public life and private moments. These cultural treasures have survived invasions, political upheaval, and social transformations. They continue to evolve, reflecting both the continuity of Iran's ancient past and the dynamism of its present. For many Iranians, culture offers a way to assert identity and pride, even amid difficult times. This rich artistic and intellectual heritage is not just a relic of history, but a living, breathing part of daily life, quietly influencing everything from education and family traditions to political discourse and international perceptions. As you let your thoughts drift into rest, imagine the vibrant colors of Persian art, the timeless words of its poets, and the intricate patterns of its carpets. A reminder that Iran's soul is as enduring and multifaceted as its history itself. Iran's history is not only a story of empires and revolutions, but also one of resilience and adaptation through countless external invasions and internal transformations. The region has been shaped by a succession of empires, each leaving its mark on the land and culture. From the Achaemenids, who created a vast empire stretching from the Indus Valley to Greece, to the Parthians and Sassanids, who defended Persian identity against Roman and later Byzantine ambitions, Iran has often been at the heart of global geopolitical shifts. When Islam arrived in the 7th century, it brought profound change. The Arab conquest introduced new religious and cultural paradigms, yet Persian civilization adapted and thrived within the Islamic world. Persian scholars preserved ancient knowledge and contributed innovations in science, medicine, philosophy, and literature, playing a key role in the golden age of Islam. Figures such as Avicenna and Al-Farabi became towering intellectuals, influencing both Eastern and Western thought. The rise of the Safavid dynasty in the 16th century marked another pivotal chapter. By establishing Sharia Islam as the state religion, the Safavids set Iran apart from its Sunni neighbors, creating a distinctive religious and cultural identity that persists to this day. The Safavid era also saw a renaissance in the arts and architecture, with cities like Isfahan becoming centers of culture and learning. Over centuries, Iran navigated the pressures of imperial ambitions from the Ottomans, Russians, and later European powers. The 19th and early 20th centuries brought increasing foreign influence, which many Iranians resisted fiercely. This resistance culminated in the Constitutional Revolution of 1906, a significant attempt to limit royal power and introduce democratic reforms, a milestone in Iran's political development. Despite setbacks, including foreign intervention and internal conflicts, Iran's spirit of independence endured. The 20th century brought dramatic transformations. The fall of the Qajars, the rise of the Pahlavis, the 1979 Islamic Revolution, and the complex interplay of ideology, religion, and modernity. Throughout, Iran's culture remained a steady foundation, its language, arts, and traditions weaving continuity amidst change. This resilience shapes how Iran approaches the future, aware of its past, proud of its identity, and conscious of the challenges ahead. As sleep deepens, hold in your mind the story of a land that has stood at the crossroads of history, a place where empires rose and fell, yet the Persian spirit endures, quietly shaping the world. Iran's economy has long been intertwined with its geography and natural resources. The vast reserves of oil and natural gas discovered in the early 20th century transformed the country's economic landscape, bringing wealth but also new challenges. Oil exports became a central pillar of Iran's economy, attracting foreign interest and interference, but also fueling ambitions for national development. The discovery of oil in the early 1900s quickly led to increased involvement by foreign companies, especially the British-controlled Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. The resulting tensions over control and profits were a major factor in Iran's political upheavals throughout the 20th century. The nationalization of oil under Prime Minister Mossadegh was a bold assertion of sovereignty but led to international isolation and ultimately the 1953 coup. In the decades following the coup, oil revenues helped fuel the Shah's ambitious modernization programs, from infrastructure projects to education and military expansion. Yet, the dependence on oil created vulnerabilities. Fluctuations in global oil prices caused economic instability. Sanctions imposed after the Islamic Revolution further complicated the economy, limiting access to international markets and technology. Iran has sought to diversify its economy, investing in agriculture, manufacturing, and technology, but challenges remain. Inflation, unemployment, and inequality have been persistent issues, often exacerbated by political tensions and sanctions. Despite these difficulties, Iran has a young and educated population, a tradition of craftsmanship and innovation, and vast natural resources beyond oil, including minerals and agriculture. The economy's future depends on balancing internal reform, global engagement, and sustainable development. Understanding Iran's economic history reveals much about its political struggles, social changes, and aspirations, a nation seeking to harness its wealth for the benefit of its people while navigating a complex world. Iran's social fabric is a rich tapestry woven from diverse ethnicities, languages, and traditions. While Persians form the majority, numerous other groups contribute to the nation's complexity, including Azeris, Kurds, Arabs, Baluchis, Turkmen, and others. Each group brings unique cultural practices, dialects, and histories, adding layers to Iran's identity. The Persian language, Farsi, serves as the official tongue and a unifying force, yet many Iranians are bilingual or multilingual. Regional languages and dialects thrive alongside Farsi, reflecting the country's diversity. Religion, too, plays a significant role. While Sharia Islam is dominant, religious minorities such as Sunni Muslims, Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, and Baha'is live in Iran. Their experiences vary widely, from relative tolerance to persecution, shaped by historical and political contexts. Family and community are central in Iranian society. Traditional values emphasize respect for elders, hospitality, and social cohesion, while modern influences have introduced shifts in gender roles, education, and urban lifestyles. Education has expanded dramatically in recent decades, leading to high literacy rates and a growing youth population engaged in cultural, political, and social life. Despite restrictions, Iranians express themselves through art, music, literature, and increasingly through digital media. Social tensions exist, often revolving around economic inequality, political freedoms, and cultural identity. Yet, the resilience and adaptability of Iran's people remain a defining feature, a testament to centuries of navigating change. Understanding the human dimension of Iran enriches our grasp of its history, reminding us that beyond politics and power struggles, it is the everyday lives of millions that shape the nation's ongoing story. As we near the conclusion of this journey through Iran's vast history, it's important to reflect on the country's role in the modern world. Iran remains a nation of contradictions. Ancient yet modern, traditional yet ambitious, isolated yet deeply connected to global currents. The challenges it faces are enormous. Economic sanctions continue to impact daily life. Political divisions persist between reformers and hardliners. Social movements struggle for greater freedoms amid strict government controls. Environmental issues like water scarcity and pollution threaten sustainability. Yet Iran also possesses remarkable strengths. Its rich cultural heritage inspires pride and identity. Its strategic location makes it a pivotal player in Middle Eastern geopolitics. Its people, young and educated, aspire for change and progress. Iran's nuclear program remains a focal point of international concern and negotiation. Its regional policies continue to influence conflicts and alliances. The delicate balance between preserving revolutionary ideals and adapting to global realities defines much of Iran's current path. Ultimately, Iran's story is still being written. Its past provides lessons and legacies. Its present demands resilience and wisdom, and its future holds possibilities shaped by the choices of its people. As you rest, let this story remind you that history is alive, not just in textbooks, but in the lives of nations and individuals quietly shaping what comes next. The story of Iran, from the grandeur of ancient Persia to the complexities of the modern Islamic Republic, is a narrative of endurance, transformation, and identity. It is a tale marked by empires that once stretched across continents, by poets whose words transcend time and culture, and by a people who have faced conquest, revolution, war, and isolation with resilience. Iran's history is neither simple nor linear. It is a mosaic of triumphs and tragedies, of cultural flourishing and political upheaval. The legacy of Cyrus the Great, who championed human rights and tolerance, lives on alongside the revolutionary zeal that reshaped the 20th century. Today, Iran stands at a crossroads. Its ancient heritage is a source of pride, while its contemporary challenges call for change and adaptation. The aspirations of its youth, the tensions between tradition and modernity, and the pressures of international politics create a complex and evolving landscape. Yet through all this, the spirit of Iran endures, a spirit that has survived thousands of years, countless battles, and shifting empires. It is a story not just of a nation, but of the human capacity to endure, to adapt, and to dream. As you drift into sleep, carry with you the quiet strength of this ancient land, a reminder that history is not just about the past, but the foundation of all tomorrows.